afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trader Merlin. It is your Monday edition. A stark contrast to the previous Mondays that we've had on this program. For the year of 2025, it seems like every Monday has been a down day. Not everyone, but a majority of them has been down. It's been fairly negative. And of course, that's changed today. We had some pretty phenomenal numbers. NASDAQ up over 2%, Russell up over 2.3%, S&P almost. It's only 1.7% gain, but just some really wonderful market moves out there today. And it's funny because the one day trade I made today was actually a counter trend trade. I went short on the S&P after the morning reversal, and that was the only trade I made from a short-term perspective. I'll tell you about some of the weekly options trades that I made today as well. But I guess the question is, first off, I hope you had a great weekend. I did something out of the ordinary. I went rock climbing out at Joshua Tree this weekend, and surprisingly pretty dang sore. I don't go rock climbing too often, so thanks to our friends out there in Joshua Tree who took care of us. It was a fun experience to do. If you haven't been out there, it's certainly one of those things you should check out. So, when you drive by Joshua Tree on the main roads out here in Southern California, you look over and you're like, whatever, it's just a bunch of weird looking trees, who cares? But if you go into the park, it's worth it paying admission. You go into the park and it is just jaw-dropping. It's incredible. It's just such an odd-looking sight of all the rock formations and hiking, and just a good time. Anyway, I hope you had something fun on your calendars as well. So let's talk about this Monday liftoff. Now, I don't want to sensationalize it, but it did kind of feel like a liftoff today. I mean, technically, I'll go show you the charts here. The way that we moved was phenomenal. And, I've been eyeballing this yellow area, which to me is null and void at this point right now. You can see you had this nice rally up to it. We paused there for 4 days, just kind of like, okay, what are we going to do? And I think that given normal market normal market conditions, if everything were to remain the same, I think we'd probably flounder around that level today, or possibly even start to sell off a little bit. However, you did happen to have a slight change in the sentiment today, and that sentiment change was a resounding risk on perspective. Risk on, for those who don't know, it's a simple, you have a risk on, you have risk off, right? This is not Karate Kid type stuff where you wax on, wax off. This is risk on, is I'm looking for those riskier assets. Typically that's U.S. equities. If you're looking at risk off, that means you're selling U.S. equities and you're putting your money into bonds or commodities like gold and silver. It's that safe haven. Today was one of those days where there was just no concern about safe havens. It was just, let's get into the equity markets and play this bounce, because these markets had been down, a pretty good clip here. And a lot of people, including myself, kind of eyeballing going, man, the future does look good, even though technically this charts look bad. We talked about on Friday's show where I had a picture of Jensen Huang with money raining down around him. His outlook and the prospect for NVIDIA and the Magnificent Seven just sounded great. And that was kind of my belief that we might start to see this turn around a little bit here. Of course, I said I was on the fence, could go either way, but I do kind of feel a little bit more bullish because everyone's so bearish at this moment in time. Now, that's true. The volume. We'll look at volume here in just a second, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into the sentiment change. So really, what was it that caused this? Well, of course, as we talked about on this program, and as traders, you always want to pay attention to what President Trump says, or whoever the president is at the moment in time. And President Trump, or at least I have made my feelings known. I think he's a sensationalist guy. He will shock and awe. He will shock the markets with 25% tariffs, and you get a tariff, and you get a tariff. And everyone's left scrambling, going, oh, no. And it creates all this uncertainty and fear. And then all of a sudden, you had that backpedal of, well, maybe we're not going to do 25% blanket tariffs on everything. We'll tariff this one and this one. So I want to be clear here. This tariff war is not over. This isn't like all of a sudden we're out of the woods and we can all just sing kumbaya and equity markets are going to soar again. This tariff war will continue. The big question is, what will those tariffs look like? It's no longer a blanket 25% here and there. It's more specific to maybe certain industries or sectors, which has not been defined yet. And of course, April 2nd here, coming up in a week, that's when a lot of these heavy tariffs are supposed to go into effect. So the markets, I think, are rejoicing, particularly with tech today. We'll look at the Magnificent Seven here in just a second. But markets are rejoicing, saying, look, if you're going to peel back some of these tariffs a little bit, then that removes a little bit of that uncertainty, and therefore equity shouldn't be selling off as much, and all of a sudden we had this nice big move to the upside. So I don't know what the outlook is with regards to what those tariff adjustments may be, how they're going to augment it from the current situation that we're in, but we'll dive into some charts here and look at that. What did Let me see here. I have 23, but nice. You gotta love that. You got what, like 15 or 16% of it today, right? Let's look at TSLA. 11.2%. We're up another 1.28% in the after hour. Yeah, and I mentioned last week. I'm extremely bullish on Tesla. I just waited. I'm guessing I'm going to wait too long here because I was not hoping, but I was expecting it to kind of continue this negative press, and watching all the videos of attacks and just the stupidity that people are doing towards Tesla cars and the redemptions. I kind of felt we'd see more downside movement here, but it looks like as of today, I'm definitely wrong. We had a heck of a pop there, 11.93, and I guess I'll start there with our Magnificent 7, okay? The Magnificent 7, the odd part is here, I tried to get Midjourney to create me a graphic for Magnificent 7, and for those listening to the podcast, it's kind of this Wild West looking theme with, it only has 6 cowboys. I could not get it to give me 7, but it's got 6 cowboys walking away from the camera in like a really red Western scene with a big moon or sun in there. It's pretty awesome. So let's walk us through the bottom to the top here on Magnificent 7. So, the S&P was up 1.7% today, which is great, but Microsoft underperformed our market today, only up 0.47. Oh, boo, only 0.47. It's one of the few in today's market that actually has a red candle. Kind of strange that Microsoft was the outlier on this one, but Apple only up 0.47%. It had a red candle because it had a pretty large gap up. For those of you who trade in Sunday night session, we were already poised to have a nice gap up this morning the way the futures were going. Now, you move up that list. Both of these underperformed the market today. That is Apple and Microsoft. Apple was only up 1.13%, but I did I forget why I put, that line was the demand zone right at 219.79 on Microsoft back in January of this year. So that should have acted as a supply zone. It did not. Today we've knifed above that one, so I will get rid of that line and save myself the confusion when I look at these charts down the road trying to find numbers. So technically, I don't see anything here that really says Microsoft or Apple is turned a corner. It's just had a great bounce over the last 2 trading sessions. Now we get to the stuff that beat the market. Google, 2.21% gain today. Technically still ugly. Technically still in a downtrend, and this probably out of the Magnificent 7, I would put as number 2 on the vulnerability list, and just because of the Trade Commission going after it for antitrust and trying to sell off their Google Chrome unit, that just creates a lot of uncertainty, legal problems for them going forward. So I put that in number 2 on my kind of problematic list. NVIDIA was up 3.15%. Now, I drew this yellow box kind of around the range that we've established for the past couple of weeks. Now, it is a wide range. That top of that box is about, call it 123. Bottom is about 105. So you got a fairly large range there. Good news is today we're up 3.15% on NVIDIA. Came right back up to those highs, pretty close to 122. Let's see, our intraday high was 122.22. So very close to popping through that 123 mark here for NVIDIA. I think it does, you're still technically in a downtrend because you're making these lower highs, but certainly becoming a little more optimistic and positive on NVIDIA. Of course, beating the market today. Now, our top 3 for the Magnificent 7, Amazon is 3.59%. It's always a struggle for me, and I know it is for some of you as well. When you look at these price charts, you're going, well, which trend am I going with? And ultimately, it boils down to what is your trading style, right? Are you a swing trader? Are you a day trader? Are you momentum? Are you a longer-term investor? What is it? Well, look at Amazon's chart. If you're a long-term investor, then you just basically buy any pullback, right? Just buy any pullback. If you are somebody that's a swing trader, going from days to a few weeks, you kind of have to look at this more shorter-term down pull here and say, are these retracements that we're witnessing today, this 3.59% up in Amazon, is that just a corrective phase in a downtrend? Because we could argue this both ways. I think we could all see that. If I look at this chart here, by the way, for the podcasters, I'm going all the way back to August of 2024. We had this huge run up in Amazon. Amazon rallied from about 151 all the way up to a high of about 240 something, 240 and change. So that was a nice uptrend, but we broke that right around February 24th. We started to make some new lows. So to me, that uptrend is broken if you're going kind of that longer term picture. Now the question is, does this have a small pullback and continue down? Or is this that turning point in the greater uptrend where we set new highs? And that's the question that only time can answer. For right now, if I had to put my hat on, I feel like this is just going to be a rally up in Amazon into an overhead supply level and then continue that shorter trend down. But for now, you had a great day to the up day. So there we go. What was the question here? Downgrade SMCI from Goldman Sachs today. I thought I might run with NVIDIA today. Saw the downgrade. Yep. It's strange that, Goldman Sachs is such a powerful one too. So when you look at the ratings of these different firms, when you have like a Goldman or a BlackRock downgrading something, that usually has a much bigger impact. If there's a lot of no-name little firms out there that they'll upgrade and downgrade all the time, and it just kind of gets shrugged off. But Goldman is certainly one of the heavier hitters. I went from incognito but my okay. What do we got here, Margaret? We still don't know the answer to that question, and Margaret, we won't. I can only come up with an expectation of what I think is going to happen. And, this industry of traders is full of people who are experts. And I say that sarcastically. Everyone's a genius when they get it right, but not when they get it wrong, and they don't want to admit when they're wrong. So, today was interesting because you guys know the SPY trade I'm in. So I dumped my SPY this morning, and I had directional puts. So dumped those directional puts, took a loss on that one, which is whatever, it was $700 and something, not that big of a deal. Certainly made up for it, and then some on long positions. So as you guys know, I'm holding MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy looking great today. I actually sold the 152.50 calls against my position. So let me go and put those on here so we can see those. There you go, the 152.50, or sorry, 252. I need 352. Man, this thing, what's $100 here or there? No big deal. The 352.50s are the calls I sold today. It was funny because when I sold them, I was like, I got $3 for each call. And again, my current position on MicroStrategy is 600 shares, so it was obviously a pretty darn good day. But when you look at the premium, I got $3, and at one point it was up to 5 and change for MicroStrategy. So we'll see if I lose my shares this week on my MicroStrategy at 352.50. If I do, I'm totally fine with that. Ideally it's going to close at 351 or 352, and I get to keep my shares, and I'll sell the 380s or 390s and continue to let this thing move to the upside. Because it feels to me like we've turned that corner here on MicroStrategy, at least for the short term. Of course, we'll talk about Bitcoin here in just a second. You want the 380s, Dakota? You went a lot further out. I should have. But I was like, I wanted a lot more premium. And this morning when I did it, it was like around 9 o'clock. I got $3 for it. Bummer. Premium would have been much higher. But, you just never know what's going to happen by Friday. Ideally, like I say, close at 352.49. Save me that 1 penny, and then I'll sell those 380s, the 390s, and let this thing continue to run. Back to the Magnificent 7, because I hadn't made it to the top yet. We finished with Amazon. Here is your Meta, which also has that same kind of question, where are we? This certainly looks more like it's a pullback and a greater uptrend, right? You can see it came right back down this blue line, so that looks pretty good for me right now from a buying opportunity for Meta. Of all the ones, I think this looks more like a buy than some of the other ones. Now Tesla, this is difficult because my long-term perspective is much more bullish on Tesla. I think Tesla is going to be, $1,000 stock. No question in my mind, it's just a matter of when. And how does it survive this current bloodletting, if you will, from all the negative that it's getting in the media and this perception that all of a sudden, Tesla is a Nazi company, which I just kind of silly. But I was really hoping we would have dropped down to maybe the 180 mark, and I could have acquired some lower. But today you had a huge move up, 11.93%. Right now it's at 281.50 in the after-hour session, another 1%. So that Magnificent 7, which fueled us in this nice little down move in the market, certainly one of the catalysts for the upside here. And I think a lot of people going towards that tech. Primary reason is tech. Given its relationship with China and the tariffs going on with China, a bit of a belief that maybe these companies will have a little bit easier of a time with the trade tariff wars going on. And I think Tesla is a mix of both of those. And I've got a spinning wheel today. Isn't that fantastic? Spinning wheels. We don't like spinning wheels. By the way, just so you know, was Tesla a sympathy rally somewhat? You know what? It could be Big Eb, but you got to ask, where's that money going to come from? Where's the buying pressure going to come in to push that thing much higher? I mean, to see Tesla in such a short window of time fall from over $480 down to a low of 217, that's a 55% slide for a juggernaut that's raking in money. Strange for me to see such a big decline, and I know what's going to happen. I'm going to be kicking myself for not having bought more down around that 200, 217, 220 mark. But it is what it is. We'll just keep grinding away. It's what we do. I also wanted to show you a really interesting chart, which we talk about trade wars and who might be impacted the most and where the biggest pain point comes. I saw this on Amazon. Saw this on Yahoo today, and I thought it was an interesting chart that some of you may like. This deals with some of our largest trade deficits in 2024. Now, that doesn't include 2025, but 2024 here, I mean, $300 billion deficit with China. The EU looked to be about $240 billion. Mexico looks about $170 billion. I don't think anyone in here would have guessed the fourth one, right? And the viewers can all see it, but those of you who listen to the podcast right now, think of who you think we have the fourth largest trade deficit with of countries in the world. And I think some people might be thinking Japan, maybe Canada. No, Vietnam. Come on, is pretty significant, man. We're at about $120 billion deficit with them. We're about $70 billion with Taiwan and Japan and South Korea. Canada's about $60 billion. And then you have, Thailand, Switzerland, Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia, South Africa. Small, but huge deficit here with China, which obviously is going to be the biggest piece of this trade war if it continues on. And ultimately for me, oops, that's not the one I wanted. I think that regardless, the dirty 15, I like that. RC, yep, that's what they're calling them, the dirty 15. I don't know why you would call them the dirty 15. They're doing business with us, so let's just all enjoy that. No, there was no UK on that list. I was surprised at that one. Where are they? What are we importing from England? I would imagine we probably have a bigger surplus, but I don't know. I don't know. That's a strange one to me as well. Does the UK? They exited the euro, so they're no longer part of the EU, so that wouldn't be part of this EU calculation. Yeah, so I don't know. That's a great question, Margaret. Where do they fall into this one? Anyway, even though Trump might backpedal a little bit here, which is that, as I mentioned, it's like his TV show. It's that shock before the commercial break, and then as soon as you come back from the commercial break, it all calms down and everything's okay again. That feels like where we're headed today. I do believe that we'll get into April, and it'll be all of a sudden full swing, massive tariff shock again, right? And the markets will tank from there, and then it'll, oh no, we're okay, we're not going to do it as much as we said we're going to do. The shock and awe will persist for the next 3+ years. So brace yourselves for more of it. Great relief rally today. I loved it. I think there was a lot of opportunity. Only one weekly swing trade was made for me with options, so let me dive into that. Nothing any use coming from the UK. Yeah, well, what am I going to get from the UK? I'm trying to think of a product that the UK manufactures. Not to sound like a jerk, but what do they make and import to us? So I got beers, potentially some beers, but like if I'm getting a beer, it's going to be Guinness. What do I got? Boddingtons, I got Kilkenny, I got some other British beers. I'm probably not going to buy an Aston Martin, right? Aston Martin would be a little out of my range. So I would think that, I think we actually probably have a surplus. We send way more there than we get from the UK. It would be nice to have a bigger list than this. Range Rover, there you go. But mainly cars, right? I can't think I'm not buying a TV made in the UK. I can't think of food products I'd be buying from the UK or clothing. And maybe there's some clothing brands, but yeah. All right, let me go into the one trade that was I would say a structured trade for me. I've been just kind of doing this weekly on the really volatile stuff. So, fortunately for you, this account that I'm sharing with you guys is a volatile one. So, I already talked about the 352.50 call options against my monster or MicroStrategy. Here's the SMCI. Even though you had news of downgrades today and negative press on SMCI, the volatility is still one of the most significant in all the financial markets. Their volatility is just absolutely massive. So I sold quite a bit of the $40. Oh, it's already on there. The $40 strikes here. Let me highlight it in blue so we can kind of keep this one on here longer. But I sold the $40 strikes expiring Friday. Collected 2.8% worth of premium for 5 days, so I'm okay with that. And looking at the price chart of what's been going on with it, there's nothing really that special here about it as a company. It's just the premium is so high. There is that risk of their accounting issues, but notice that it really hasn't deviated much out of this range. Do I dare put a box on? It seems like every time I put a box on price, it ends up breaking that thing really in a short window of time. So, we're kind of stuck in this $10 price range, which is certainly significant. I mean, that's like almost 30% range. But the strikes I've been selling have been near the lower end or middle of that. So as they continue to slowly move to the upside, I'm fine selling puts near to the money. I was looking at the 39s to go a little bit lower and be safer, but the premium was just fine, and I kind of felt like I thought this would be a bullish week. I didn't expect it to have such a big Monday. I thought we'd see a few days of slight gains and end the week with a positive week. But right now I have the $40 strikes on super microcomputer SMCI. There you go. Those are the only two. And then the other one, just so you can see. So the other trade was on the S&P futures today. We'll go up here and bring up the ES. And I'm starting to digress back into my day trader days. I used to always trade that morning reversal. And that morning reversal has been just a really solid pattern. And essentially it goes back to order flow and markets tend to reverse. And I'll put a vertical line here. I was just waiting 30 minutes in, which ended up being, there's 50, there's your first reversal, right? Right at 7 o'clock. It didn't fall much. It was just a few points, so it was a small little winning trade. Nothing to write home about. But just thought it was kind of funny that on a day when the S&P was up, 1.7%, I actually was going short and had a winning trade. Oh, the irony! Why didn't you just go long, Merlin? Well, I didn't get a good entry. Right, I think that's the question would probably pop up here is, why didn't you go long in the S&P today? Well, number one is I was busy doing other things, so I couldn't watch the whole time. Number two is I generally don't like trading that open move unless I get a real big signal. And yes, you could argue that we had a hammer formation in the opening 5-minute candle, but it wasn't enough for me to pull the trigger. Just didn't feel comfortable doing that. I'm not going to take big shots and gambles in that future account and trying to be more stable stuff. So I just went for that reversal. Once we broke below the low here on that little kind of spinning top or shooting star, just before that I ended up shorting there. But like I say, it was not a big one, just a few points out of it. So small stuff. If Toyota gets in the EV market, it's over for Tesla. Toyota is in the EV market. Toyota's in the EV. You got EVs. Is Prius is it only hybrid, or is that a full EV? I thought Toyota did have a full EV. And it's funny, Chris, I've actually been saying this one for a while. We did a show a couple years back talking about the EV space, and the big question that came up, resounding question from everyone was, well, when's the competition going to get there? And it's like, look, if you have all of these car companies with full established manufacturing facilities like GM, like Toyota and Honda, they could easily have jumped into that scene. And I wonder if, I don't know, I wonder what the apprehension was, or why they didn't just get into the space with more dominant force. So Tesla at this point is number one. I actually am still a big fan of Rivian. On the way out to Joshua Tree today, or over the weekend, we saw Rivian charging station, which was the first one for me. Here's Rivian's chart. Its past couple days have been great. I have no position in this one right now. I really wanted to sell some puts on that one before, but I did not. I know. You got to go long run. You live for the short. Well, you're right. I don't live for the short. It was just, I was looking for the market to reverse. It was nothing to do with the long for the day. It was just really a short-term day trade was setting up, and got in and just, a couple points and got taken out. So there was nothing there. But yeah, why not just buy long and hold it? I need a setup. No, I need a setup for me that makes me want to jump into it. And I love breakout trades. Unfortunately, today on that S&P, if you go look at it, there's for the top of this, which really is, let me put a line on the top here. to really establish kind of that breakout, it had to be above 5,770. You guys can see that blue line here. That is the high point going all the way back into the 10th of March. So we've been kind of stuck below that. We've hit it a few times, and now we get that nice breakout to the upside. So yeah, if anything, that would have been the setup for me that triggered it today, but I just was preoccupied with other things at that time when we broke through it. Here is that blue line. So it broke through that in the wee hours of the morning. So that was like at midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And so I wouldn't have been able to capitalize on that breakout. Now, if it happened during the day, a lot of times I'll set an alert and draw my attention to it. So if it does break through it, then I will have an alert set up that comes to me while I'm working, and I'll just jump over and make a trade on that one. But it did not do that one today, unfortunately. Yep, and that's a real positive sign, right? Now, when you look at what it did today, it almost closed the dead high. We had a nice little pull off right at the last few minutes of the market, which, no big deal, but that can happen. So you had this really sharp decline here right around 12:55, which is 3:55 Eastern, so 5 minutes before the market's closed. You had a pretty sharp decline. But yeah, pretty much at the highs. Now let's go back to the SPY because that gives you a clearer picture of what the ETF may look like. Let me bring up the daily. When you have a day that looks like this, obviously that's a very positive sign. Because typically when you get a gap up, and so I'm looking at the SPY ETF right now, you had that gap up. We closed Friday on SPY. We had a closing price of $563.98. And then this morning we opened up at $570. So $6 gap up right away, and then pretty much moved up all day except for that little pullback right at the end. That's extremely bullish. Because when you have a big gap up in a market that's been in a downtrend like it has been, typically that leads to profit taking. In this case, not only was there no profit taking, buyers stepped in and kept pushing it. So that leads me to believe that over the next couple of days, we'll continue to see market sentiment positive and rally to the upside. Now, the challenge that we all have is we can act on a price chart, we can act on a pattern, we can act on our thoughts about what's going on, but it's a tweet or a comment or a post from Trump that derails every single thing. Like I think it may have done. And looking at that S&P, it really was setting up technically to be a great trend reversal at this yellow box supply zone between 57.24 and 57.60. It looked fantastic. And then today, nope, it's now null and void. So I'm literally going to just take that out of there and take this downside forecast out of the picture because dynamics have changed, right? All of a sudden, Trump changed everything with some comments about tariffs. And it really didn't do much. It just changed the sentiment. It's just unbelievable in trading how the sentiment can change so quickly and just go from a risk on to a risk off perspective. And that's really what the big catalyst for today was. Fortunately for me, my positive trades far outweighed that one S&P long put. And oh well. We can't win them all. And I mentioned on Friday's show that I'm kind of straddling this market a little bit with that short position because I wasn't quite sure. It was really just, are we there yet? I don't know. Noam says, I hope that gap doesn't close April 2nd. Yeah. Well, you keep your eye on it because you hear all the talk track about how he's going to backpedal and lighten up a little bit on some of these tariffs. We know very well that he could easily say, no, you guys aren't coming to the table with a good enough deal for me and American people. I'm taxing you full 25 across the board. And we're back to that again, and it just, it's frustrating. It makes it challenging. At the end of the day, I will admit I'm frustrated with these wild whipsaws. But at the end of the day, when I look at my account, I'm like, I'll deal with it. As long as the account's moving in the north direction, I'll let the frustration slide. If I was losing in these markets, then I'd be a little bit different attitude maybe. All right, what else do we have on the plate to discuss? Mike says a few times at Joshua Tree the last 18 months. And just be careful out there, man. One weird part about Joshua Tree is when you get far enough in there, there's no cell phone reception. What is nice, though, is now Apple has apparently Starlink connections. So you can use it for emergency services for free if you need to dial 911. Otherwise, ain't no phone out there. When we drove into that park, there was a big injury yesterday. I don't know what happened to the individual. I've been looking. When we rolled in, right as we set up to hike, or to rock climb, there was an ambulance came roaring in. And then a fire engine, another ambulance, and then police. And at one point, it felt like there was like 30 different emergency vehicles. It was just everywhere. All over the whole road was blocked with emergency vehicles. And then about 2 to 2.5 hours later, they brought in a helicopter. Something pretty bad. So yeah, don't hurt yourself out at Joshua Tree. Be safe. Let's go into another one that I thought was interesting today. So we've talked about, and again, this is a complete shift. I've just jumped here because I had a slide set up for this one, and I want to discuss it because I'm curious what you guys think. When we did a show a few months back called Going Nuclear, that was not a marketing ploy saying buy all these companies. We just don't know what the future of nuclear power looks. From my perspective, I do believe that I think nuclear will have a resurgence. I think it's going to kind of come back, and some of these facilities and plants will be put back online and maybe even build some new ones just because of the cost per kilowatt hour once you get the systems in place. And one of those that was one of the darling stocks was OKLO, OKLO. And I saw some headlines today that I really want to discuss this one. So they report earnings after hours today. I did not look. I'll look at their earnings here in just a second. Judging by their price move, it looks like they may have missed their earnings, and I'll refresh here so I can get the earnings up for you. But this company is backed by Sam Altman. And you guys know Sam Altman is of OpenAI, the lovely contentious arguments with him and Elon Musk. But he's one of the main investors in OKLO as well as several others. Now, there is a lot of speculation on this is going to be the next greatest thing, right? This is going to be the next nuclear energy company. And I wanted to bring this up and kind of put a cautionary note here because they did get some new approval today from the NEC, the Nuclear Energy Commission. And look what happened to their stock. I mean, they were up 13.81% today. Now, it's kind of interesting that this happens on a day when they're reporting earnings. So they were up to, $30.91. You had a 13% gain today simply because they got a letter of approval from the NEC. Now, what is that nuclear energy approval? For them to get to this point of producing these miniature reactors, which is they want to do, make smaller reactors, they have to go through a gazillion different hurdles and testing and certifications and loopholes up the wazoo, which maybe some of that will be reduced under Trump. I don't know. But to get to that point of actually running a power plant, there is an incredible amount of legal stuff that you have to get through and benchmarks, standards to pass. They got one today, but it's just a very elementary one, right? To let them kind of progress with their plan. If you are buying, hey, Jordan. Yeah. Hey, Jordan, good to see you. Chernobyl is a bit of an outlier, and I think we've come a long way since the 1980s, right? When you look at 3 Mile Island, that was the 70s, I think 3 Mile Island, and then you had 80s was Chernobyl. Those things have gotten, the technology's gotten better. From what I've been reading, I'm not a nuclear physicist, so I guess I should just shut up because that's not my skill set. But in reading through what OKLO is trying to do, they are trying to set up one of these mini reactors, and they're looking to get it set up in, I believe it was Utah or Idaho. I think it was Idaho. If you're buying into this, understand that you have years before they will ever even consider making a profit. So again, if you're buying into nuclear, something like OKLO, they had talked about going online with their facility, their new plant, I believe in Idaho, in 2027. So I'm going to put this onto a weekly time frame here because I need to show you kind of where that is. Here's where OKLO stands today. And I'm going to do it by December of 2027 just so we can have enough free time on the screen. And here's a vertical line at the end of 2027. That blank space that you see on your screen is how long it's going to take them to start to even get their first plant online. That's their target, is 2027. So while I like nuclear, I like the concept, I think we should be doing nuclear. Just make sure it's very regulated and we don't have any mistakes because it's just too detrimental to everybody. If you have this target out here, I think for those of you who are looking at buying nuclear, I kind of feel like you should wait. I think right now there's a lot of hype and expectation built into this OKLO. However, they're not going to make another penny for at least 2 years. That is a long time. And right now, they have their earnings on here. They lost 6 cents. I don't even know where they're getting any income from, but they got to be spending a ton of money, and they haven't really even built anything yet. So I wanted to share this with you because I know we got a lot of nuclear fans out there. I think I saw Big Eb chime in say, nuclear, baby. Oh, no, it was Andres. Go nuclear, go nuclear. Yeah, I'm all for it. but I would wait a little bit. I think you'll get much better buying opportunities. I think that over time, people are going to realize, oh, are they going to make it? Right? Does OKLO have enough money to actually get to the point where they can finish and build their actual reactor and test it and get approval and now go online? That is a lot of steps and time in between that process. And to me, the ATR must be how it is now. I know. That's why I'm wondering, like, how do you make any money? They haven't made anything. What are they selling? So, yeah, I thought I would share that with you today because a friend of mine asked me if I'm interested in buying OKLO, and I was like, I love the idea. If you ask me if I want to buy the idea, if it was a business that was functioning today and they were producing nuclear power plants, I'd be like, I'm in. You love it, I'm in. But the fact knowing that the company itself plans on not doing anything to generate 1 penny of profit till 2027 makes me go, nah, wait, right? I'll wait and see if anything bottlenecks or causes problems before them. I drove a forklift in 1975. You like it? The power plants, huh? Bring them on. We need more. We're going to use more and more and more power. Man, I tell you. Especially with all this AI. After watching the keynote speech by Jensen Huang at the GTC conference, the GPU technology conference in San Jose last week, energy. It's all going to revolve around energy. And if the energy system goes down or the grid can't handle it, we're all going to pay for it one way or the other, with higher energy costs or just systems faltering because we don't have the energy infrastructure. So really, whoever sets up the most abundance of power first probably wins that game. By the time they're profitable, the stock maybe $300. It could be, Big Ab. It really could. I think if I'm going to buy into it, I'll probably wait till 2026. I'll wait till 2026 when there's a little bit better roadmap of achievement of investors and see what's going on there. But you're going to burn cash for 2 solid years. Most businesses can't do that, just straight burning cash for 2 years. And that cash burning, in my opinion, is probably going to continue to accelerate as they actually start building it out. That's going to be crazy. Yep. Yeah, right, Margaret, especially with electronic money. So you have AI. You're going to have all the robotics, everything that's connected to robotics. You've got electric vehicles, which are consuming more and more electricity. And, that's not getting any support from President Trump. But in future presidents may change their tune on, EVs and electrical grid and stuff like that. So, yeah, more and more of a digital world, we're going to need more energy. So OKLO may have some problems a little bit down that road. Okay, let me go back to the crypto side of things since we didn't get to our number one here, and I didn't go through all the indexes, but the risk on side of things. Let's talk about that risk on. That risk on was people flooding the equities markets. And as we looked at the S&P, which is up 1.7%, well, NASDAQ was slightly better. Of course, that's got the Magnificent 7 in it. Beautiful up day, but still way down from its mid-February highs. Now, the other broader index here, the Russell 2000, which is up 2.45% on the day, looking great as well, although I would argue it's coming into a drop-based drop that goes back to February 28th, and that could be problematic as well. Now, the big daddy here, Bitcoin. So Margaret asked, did we hit the Bitcoin low? And I don't know why it's not on here. Maybe it's on the spot chart. Let me put it on, because I wrote something on the spot chart, and I'm going to stand by that one. I do think we're there. Yeah, there we go. We will never hit this level again. I put that on there on 314, and that price level was 76,626 on the spot market. So, yeah, I look at this chart, and I know you're going to tell me, like, Merlin, it's trending down. It is trending down. We've got a lower high and lower low put in since January of this year. However, I've noticed over the past 2 weeks, we've not been able to make new lows. It just consistently makes stair-stepping up here. That's telling me buying's coming in. And there's been a ton of people who are shorting Bitcoin. What'll happen is you're going to get short squeezes. You're going to get these people will all of a sudden be forced liquidated out of their short positions, and that creates buying. And that may have been part of the catalyst today. Also, I do believe that the risk-on appetite does help fuel Bitcoin. So there used to be a belief that it followed gold. It almost feels like it's following the equity indexes now. So as that risk on pours into the market, money flowed into Bitcoin today. Today was up 2.32%. Of course, if you look at the futures market, it's going to be misleading because that includes the entire weekend. But you notice here that Sunday and Monday were both really good for Bitcoin. In the last 48 hours, actually less than 48 hours, Bitcoin has moved a total of 5.1%. So that's a start. I don't think we're out of the woods yet, but it does really feel like there's this sentiment coming back into Bitcoin. Now, as we rally higher here in Bitcoin, right around 90,500, there's your next logical obstacle, and then it's 95,000. Once we start breaking those, the liquidations will get higher and the optimism will jump in. I've talked to so many people that are just dumbfounded at the price of Bitcoin not rallying and getting up to 130, and I think we should probably be way higher than 88,000 today, which is why I've held on to that micro strategy. I keep selling calls against it and bought a little bit of Bitcoin, periodically with a few $100 here and there, just adding to my position. But this is a big risk on piece, and I do like the chart here. I love the fact that we broke through those highs from just last week, which is great. Stair steps of weekly highs. Yvonne says, Michael Saylor bought some more. It's funny how I've almost become immune to that. It seems like every week, he's buying less, but he's adding to his position, but he's not buying as much as he was before. He'd be buying like $1.6 billion and $10 billion. Now it's like, I'm buying $100 million or $200 million. Hey, as long as he keeps buying, that's a driver for the price of Bitcoin to move higher, right? You're put a floor underneath it, and I think that floor is right around 76,000 now. So I agree with you, Margaret. I do think that the lows are in. I think that it's done. I think Bitcoin will now start its trend to the upside, especially with all of that crazy positive talk from the president and all of his support team and staff. I think you're going to witness the next big bull market run of Bitcoin happen over the next 6 months. So it should be pretty exciting, but we got to start somewhere, and this feels like a slow start to it. We'll see if I'm right down the road. Only time will tell on that one. But just the wild swings. And if you look at some of the numbers today, I'll show you some of the bigger gainers. This is why I love crypto. Got Render is up 10%. Unfortunately, meme coins like Pepe up almost 9% today, but a lot of big gainers in the crypto space. It's interesting. I saw a comment here from Chase as ETH holding monthly trend line low too. Yeah, and I mentioned this last week's show, I believe. Ethereum's got to do something. They're dying. Ethereum is slowly dying, and if they don't fix their scalability issue, they're going to lose their market share to Solana and Sui and Aptos and Near Protocol. They're all going to start eating the lunch of Ethereum. So I don't have anybody that I know that is part of the Ethereum development community, but unless they fix their scalability issue, Ethereum is just going to slowly continue its dive. Like, is this the last time it's above 2,000? Probably not. But I'm not that optimistic. When you look out and you see so many other solutions for scalability and speed and transactions that just run circles around Ethereum, it's problematic. It's problematic. And I've been saying that for a while in my course, and sadly, Ethereum is my second largest holding. I've had it for years, really, because it's the juggernaut, and I like Vitalik and I like the team and the community, but if you don't fix the ailing problems to your product, people will go elsewhere, and that's what's happening right now. Let's see. What did you say, Big Eb? That was closed last week, just. Oh, yeah, the Bitcoin one? Yeah. And by the way, apparently that same address, Big Eb, that guy flipped and went long, apparently. Who knows what the heck's going on? It happened so quickly. So Ethereum does have a similar picture. It's bottom. It just started to turn, make a new high. It has not made a new low. So I would certainly agree with you, Chase, that it does look good here from a technical perspective, at least in the very short term. The bigger picture looks awful, but maybe it starts around the corner here. Why the huge gain in CRO? There could be several different reasons for this one. CRO is very speculative. It's a token of Crypto.com. And I'm not a huge fan of Crypto.com. They're a lending protocol, but the CRO guy, the CEO of Crypto.com, was at the White House, and he was, at that crypto summit, and maybe that there's some preferential treatment going on for Kronos and CRO. That to me would probably be the most likely alternative. Now, one of the things that you can get with Kronos, I don't know if anybody here has done this, but let me bring up Crypto.com. 1 second. You go to Crypto.com. This is a lending protocol. So you deposit your crypto in there, and then you lock it in a contract, essentially, and they will pay you interest. Just remember that they're loaning your crypto to somebody else, and this is what got Three Arrows Capital. This got Terra Luna into trouble. This got Celsius, Voyager, and BlockFi all in trouble. They all went bankrupt because of that same business model. So for me, I know what happened in the past. I don't want anything to do with Crypto.com. I have like $3,000 left there of some. I forgot which. I think it's Matic or Polygon that I have sitting over there, and they're paying me like 3 or 4%. But that's the only thing. Everything else is I take off of Crypto.com because I don't trust them. However, if you want to earn, it's kind of interesting. You can go here and go to individuals, and you can go to where was it? There's a used to say earn right here on the front. Let's see if I can find it for you again. Let me zoom back to me while I scroll here. If you keep a certain amount of CRO tokens, they give you better rates, which I think was a very cool way to earn. And let me see if I can find it here. How to earn crypto. They've taken off their front page. Yeah, I agree with you, Chase. CRO sucks. They offer big staking rewards and offers, then rug pull them on a dime. Yeah, and they have all kinds of very weird limitations where you can't earn more than a certain amount, and they just take it away from you. So it's not that great. Not a big fan. But if you hold CRO tokens, they will give you a higher rate of return. I'm trying to find it for you here, but I'm not finding it, unfortunately. Anyway, I will move on from that. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I do have some CRO just because I needed it to get higher rates of return. But they've removed all that staking services or their earned services from their front page. That's kind of interesting. I like it. Here we go. There's my example for you. So if you look here, let's say you want to take your Bitcoin and deposit your Bitcoin and earn some money, right? So right now I'm earning nothing on my Bitcoin. It's on my cold storage. I earn nothing. If I were to take their CRO tokens, let's say I have less than $4,000 worth of their CRO tokens, and I deposited $5,000 worth of Bitcoin and I keep it locked up for 3 months, I can earn 2%. But if you put in more CRO, let's say $40,000 or more, my rate of return doubles. So they're incentivizing you to buy their CRO token to earn higher yields, which I guess is legal. Shouldn't be any issue with that, but that's what they do. So that's probably part of the reason why CRO is moving up. The publicity and spotlight that Crypto.com has gotten, also being on part of the political stage for their company, that's part of it, but they move real quick. Juan says, any Bitcoin ETF worth getting into? I have some Beto paying a monthly dividend. Yeah, I mean, other than the monthly dividend, I see no reason to be in Beto. Beto is, their dividend is kind of crazy. I need to dig deeper into exactly how that dividend's working. It seems suspect to me. It's really way too high. But if you want to actually play a spot ETF, it's IBIT, I-B-I-T. So when you look at these side by side, let's go IBIT, and then I'm going to add on Beto. Let's add on Beto to the top. Okay, so that's added. They do not have the same rate of return. All right, so this is what's funny is a lot of people. So if you go, I'm going to do a comparison challenge here. If you go back to April 22nd, that's just the anchor point for this chart that you see here. If you go back to April 22nd, your Bitcoin has a rate of return currently of 33%. Your Beto has a rate of return of negative 31%. So now Juan and any others holding Beto, it sounds great because with Beto they pay a ridiculous dividend. They pay a great dividend, but you're losing value on the underlier. So you got to understand that trade-off. They're essentially supposed to be the same thing, but they're not. They're very different rates of return. IBIT at the top here in the candlestick chart, that's going to follow Bitcoin much more closely, whereas Beto is not. All right, Beto's going to have this decay because of the dividends they pay and their operations. Now let me go and throw on BTC USD so we can see that one here. Notice this is Bitcoin and IBIT. I mean, those are lockstep, almost identical rates of return. That's the way it should be if you're buying Bitcoin. So Juan, be careful with that Beto. It's enticing because of their rate of return. It's like, wow, I get so much yield. It's great, but you're losing value. So let's go to Beto just to show you the rate of return. It's nuts. Their last one was 72 cents. So this is a $19 security that paid 72 cents. So what's that rate of return? We'll take 19 cents, 0.19, divide that, or sorry, $19, excuse me. 72 cents, 72, and we'll divide that by 19. Divided by 19. So that's a 3.7% rate of return per month. It's great. It's great. It's great for a while. And who knows how long that will last. I'm not a big fan of the dividend side of things. I don't like buying a security for dividends. So if you wanted to buy Bitcoin, I would say buy IBIT. IBIT is the way to go. There's a Fidelity one as well, but it's pretty cheap. But IBIT is the most liquid. It's BlackRock. It's only 0.25% right now. So, all right, let me go back to one last little piece here, and then I'll wrap it up. I want to talk quickly about the numbers that came in today from services and manufacturing. I'll make this larger, or try to make them larger, so you guys can all see. So I don't really look too much at the rest of the world. What I am looking for on the actual numbers is anything above 50, right? Anything above 50 means it's growth. So France has both 48 and 46, which means that their services and manufacturing numbers are declining. They're going down. Germany, manufacturing going down. Services is right at 50. So far out of France and Germany, this does not look good from a manufacturing or services growth. Then you look at the EU. Their manufacturing is at 48.7 and their services at 50.4. Not good. These are showing no growth, if not drawdowns and optimism in manufacturing. Then you look at the UK, which is the worst on here. The UK has 44.6% of their manufacturing. So we're not making anything over there that's worthwhile, and we're not optimistic about it. Their services numbers jumped to 53.2, which is it's good. It's above 50. And then we dive into the US. Now, we know that the U.S. is not the manufacturing powerhouse that it was decades ago. We've pretty much given that to China and Mexico and other countries to do the dirty work for us. However, there is this big push to bring companies back in the United States and maybe start to do manufacturing here in the States, which could bring back jobs, and that may start to boost the manufacturing numbers. What did we get? Well, flash manufacturing PMI number for the U.S., which came out this morning, was 49.8, which means unchanged. There's no optimism. There's no pessimism. You're pretty much just stuck at zero. Now, it's down over the past month. It was at 52.7, and we've dropped to 49. So we are seeing a little bit of negative slide there in manufacturing. But look at services. Services went from 51, jumped all the way up to 54. Now, look, 54 is not like epic. It's not, write a letter to your grandparents about this is the greatest thing that ever happened. If we got into the 60s and 70s, then it's like we are rocking. But at least, goes back to what we know, which is the U.S. is a service dominant country. 54.3, pretty good, beating expectations, which means more and more money going and optimism coming into that service sector. So just wanted to share that with you guys because it is interesting to see what other parts of the world are doing. And honestly, Europe looks like they're in trouble. French, Germany, and the whole EU barely at 50. For the U.S. and for the U.K., services has been doing pretty well. And pretty much everyone's doing terrible on manufacturing across the board. Yeah, typically it is, Margaret. And you can see that the German numbers were better than France, that's for sure, but not much. Not much. Anyway, wanted to share that one with you guys before I dove into what's happening for the 25th. So let's look at that one real quick. For the U.S. markets, we do have a couple big announcements. The S&P Case-Shiller Composite 20 Home Price Index, which is a good one. For those of you who own homes, you want to see this one increase. We have seen it hook up over the past 3 months. We'll see if that continues that surge. Right now, expectations are we're going to go from 4.5% to 4.6%. You also have HPI numbers. That's all going to be 1 hour. Let's see, that's at 6 a.m., so 30 minutes before the equity markets open. And then as the markets open, we have new home sales, Richmond Manufacturing Index, and the CB Consumer Confidence numbers. So some important stuff there for the U.S. equity markets. And then on the earnings side of things, let me bring up your earnings calendar for mañana. Not a lot of big names this week, but maybe a couple on this list for tomorrow. Yeah, McCormick & Company and GameStop. Oh, GME. How are they doing? Let's see if Roaring Kitty can have a say here. GME. Now, there is a lot of speculation that GameStop is going to start to take some of their money. They have a lot of cash on hand, and they are going to be buying Bitcoin. This is the speculative rumor that's going on right now about GameStop. But, you guys all know my stance. I'm bearish on it. If they don't change their business model, they're going to zero, just like Blockbuster did. But Big Eb says, manufacturing is hurt by the threat of tariffs, not so much, not with service. Exactly. Yep. Totally. I like some of the Fed members who speak to see when rates will change, or at least what their thoughts are on it, Margaret. And if you're looking at that, we do have a couple speaking tomorrow. You've got Kugler speaking, you've got Williams speaking, and then for Germany, you've got the German Bubba President Nagel will be speaking. So there are some pretty big speakers out there for tomorrow. All right, that's going to do it for me. If you guys have something you want to discuss on tomorrow's show, let me know. Email me, tradermerlin@gmail.com. It's on the screen right now, or you can put your comments down below any of the YouTube videos. If you are new, hit that subscribe button. And that said, I will see everybody on tomorrow's show. I'm looking forward to see if we get this follow through for our Tuesday session and break that mold. Remember, Mondays and Tuesdays are usually fairly negative, at least for 2025. Maybe we get a whole different week. We'll probably have Monday, Tuesday green, Wednesday red, and then Thursday, Friday will be green again. We'll just go the exact opposite of our model. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on tomorrow's show. Take care.